in too.
Okay. So we are live. Woo! Oh my goodness.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello. We were having a little technical difficulties, but everything worked perfectly, of course. So welcome to day 6 of the Awakening Summit. Oh my gosh, it's been incredible. So my name is Abigail Mensah-Bonsu. I am the founder of Moon Goddess Academy and the Moon Goddess Circles. And I am so excited today to be interviewing this amazing woman. I absolutely adore her. Kayleigh is the CEO of Soul Excellence Ventures. And Kayleigh, welcome. Welcome, my dear.
Thank you, Abigail, and happy Saturday, everyone. It's so good to be back and to be in the opposite seat for a little while and be interviewed. This is fun.
So, Kayleigh, tell us about you. We have there's so much I want to ask you, but let's start with that. Tell us about who you are.
It's a big question, but I think, right now I am the CEO, and it feels like a really amazing role to finally step into. It's been a long time coming, and the work that I do right now with leaders to help them amplify their courageous voices and to share my own is just really, really rewarding. But it has a really long history, like going all the way back to middle school. And then I think, for me, my journey really began coming out of college. And I entered the corporate world. I was so excited to get my first job in Washington, D.C. And I was a researcher at the time for a large global consulting company. And what I loved about working there was our whole mission as a company was to challenge conventional wisdom. So I was just appreciating this recently, is like my mind was trained in those early years at the company to say, why is this not working? How could things get better? What are some of the ideas that the world's business leaders are following that don't hold sway anymore, that don't work anymore, and what could be better? So that was just like the coolest entry point. And I think you'll see like the thread, in terms of like who I am and what I'm about, like challenging conventional wisdom, staying curious, proposing new ideas. Like it really came to fruition in those early days in the corporate world.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of corporate world. So real quick, I want to read the intro to your chapter, and then that's going to just lead us right into my next question for you. So, oh man, your chapter was just fire. I love it. I just earned a 6-figure commission check and I wanted to throw up. How much longer can I do this? I thought as I swallowed hard and forced a smile in front of my colleagues. How much longer could I win results but lose myself? That part, but lose myself. So tell me about, how did you go from the corporate realm to doing what you're doing, to being the CEO of Soul Excellence?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely brought me back in that chapter, because after spending 8 years in this really large corporate company, which introduced me to incredible executives around the world, and actually proved to be one of my superpowers, was connecting with senior executives much older than me. But because we were talking about new ideas and ways of being, like we could just connect. And, that's something I'm building on right now in the business. But hearing you read that chapter, that came from a moment of being, really in the glory days, of a San Francisco tech startup where I was super lucky to join, had an amazing run. We were building this incredible company. And I had that moment of like closing our largest contract ever. It was a $4 million contract. It doubled our revenue basically overnight. It was just like, wow, I can't believe that I'm doing this, that I'm here. And at the same time, it's so interesting. It's like the being in the startup is what opened my eyes to being a CEO, to actually being really inspired by our CEO and having so much fun building and delegating and hiring. But that crack happened where I realized like I wasn't building my dream. I was selling real estate technology software. I've yet to own a home. My interest in real estate is like nil. Forced exercise, you know, especially on that contract. And I had that little like, whew, okay, I can see that I love to lead, to be around incredible people, to facilitate amazing conversations, to actually build the structure of the company. But what if I did that based on the things that I love and who I felt destined to be? And so, you know, actually, Abigail, it took like a year from that moment, like that little breakdown moment, to hear the calling of soul excellence. Was one of the only things. I'm such a like sit down and brainstorm person, you know, like I love my Google documents. I have my bullet point lists, you know, like this is how I think, but soul excellence didn't come that way. Like I was in a meditation with a mentor and the term just came into my being. And I thought, I don't even know what it means yet. Justin, I'm like, I don't know what this means, but it feels compelling enough and inspiring enough to just follow. And so at the beginning of 2020, I decided, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. I know that I can be an amazing number 2 and support other CEOs, but how about being number 1 and creating this incredible community and sharing these ideas that I have? And so I left San Francisco. I left a super stable job where it was like 20 grand a month to just show up and like not really do all that much for another company I had joined. And my family thought I was crazy, you know, and we're like, what are you doing? And I spent the first 6 months of this year writing, and the chapter in Awakening is there are many examples of like finding my voice and deprogramming.
Yeah.
Who am I without the job? Who am I without the clear salary right now? Who am I when I'm just me? And then, of course, COVID's been this beautiful backdrop to say, okay, like it actually created more space and more time to fall into and to create this beautiful, really this beautiful path with Soul Excellence Ventures right now.
Wow. So I'm curious. So what did you discover? Who are you in that discovery, in that time of, you know, pulling in that energy of soul excellence, and like what came up? Well, who are you in that energy?
It's a great question. So I realized that I'm supremely creative. I realized that I was a leader. I knew I had them, but I honestly thought it was really because of the titles that I inhabited and not because of the natural energy that I brought. And I also realized that I was visionary, that I could see where things were headed. And so, for example, like I was starting to see probably 4 years ago that our culture was headed to a place where we were seeing early signs of cancel culture, of people not being allowed to think what they wanted to think, to speak what they wanted to speak, to associate with who they wanted to associate with. And I saw this really clearly in San Francisco, which I think was an epicenter for a lot of that, you know, sort of groupthink dynamics at the time. And so as I've realized who I am, you know, that's become an important calling for the work of soul excellence, of how do I create space for other leaders to step up and to share their message, and to do that, of course, through the publishing arm of the business and then also the consulting arm. So I realized a lot, and it's so much of it like I kind of knew, but it was so hidden for so long that I was like, oh wait, let's you know, reveal again and sort of reclaim who I was.
I love that you said reveal and reclaim, because it sounds like it was like a resurfacing, like, hey, guess what? This is who you really are. Now you need to step into that and claim it, claim what you already are, right? So that is so powerful.
Yeah, it wasn't like I need to go get, you know, the entrepreneur certificate this year or make sure I do that. It just was like, wait, no, okay, I've always been this way. And to just go now towards saying, all right, I can't help these feelings that I have about the mission to amplify the voices of courageous leaders. And so how do I put that out there? How do I create platforms? How do I create space? Because I know that there are so many women like me who they've been extremely successful. They're really good at everything that they do. They are the go-to people in corporate. And yet there's part of them that's wondering, like, am I living the life that I desire? Are there more possibilities for me? Is there a bigger vision for me? And just like, oof, those little cracks is like, I want to work with leaders who like those cracks have been exposed and they're going to get close. Like, ooh, how do I get back to who I am and realize that it's the energy of who you are, which is creating all these incredible things in the world. It's not because you worked for this really incredibly successful company or you're, just over here in this foundation. Like, it's because of you and how you're able to influence and magnetize. And I just love working with people who are on that journey right now. And it's at all ages. I'm seeing like the awakening.
Absolutely. I love the work that you do because I believe that it's so important. It's so important in the corporate realm. I feel like the more successful you get, the more you lose yourself. Then you have this drive that kind of takes you away from your core truth, right? And you just kind of follow that drive until eventually you just feel like, what am I doing? Why am I even here? Why am I doing this? And I love what you're doing because you are bringing in that soul of that person back. It's like, okay, this is why you were successful doing what you're doing. It went all the way inside, right? You're bringing it back to them. It's just incredible when you work with clients in that way. Like, what are some things that come up?
So, I mean, it's a great question. It's something that I'm experiencing right now. So, as many in this group know, I'm publishing a book called Leading Through the Pandemic, Unconventional Wisdom from Heartfelt Leaders. And it contains the stories of 25 corporate leaders and entrepreneurs who've had their own awakening, who had their story of personal growth to share about leading in 2020. And the vision for this book is for it to start to be a new handbook for leaders. Like 21st century leadership looks like this. How do you start to pull from these stories? But what's really interesting is as these leaders are writing their chapters, and we had a group call this week, and I had a bunch of one-on-one sessions. It is so vulnerable to look back on the year and for each of these leaders to say, here's where I succeeded, here's where I failed, here's the mistakes that I made, here's when I lost my temper, here's how, I gained all this weight and was angry toward my family and didn't understand my team well. And like, how do I share that? How do I express that? How vulnerable do I go? And so I think it's so cool that, the leaders think they've signed up to write a chapter. Little do they know, they're really connecting back to their soul. I believe they're integrating the wisdom that they experienced this year, and that they're going to inspire so many people who are like, yeah, I felt that way. Like it wasn't easy managing a remote team. Yes, it was draining being on video all day. Actually, I did have fun seeing my kids in a new light. And here's what it helped me to realize. Like, there's all of that, but we're at that really fragile moment in the group right now where it's like, push on, let that emotion out. And my responsibility as the leader of the project is to create that safe space, but also to encourage people and to get them through those fears of how will I look to my colleagues, to my company, to the rest of the world. And we'll see a mix of those who are going to go all the way and really, really share and connect with the soul, and others who, I know for good reasons, will play it a bit more safe. But each person is on a journey just by virtue of saying, yes, I want to share what this year has been like for me.
Yes. So I'm curious, for you and your journey, what are some things that you did, or how were you able to overcome that? What would my friends think? What would my family think? Like that, because that's a huge transition, So how did you break through that?
It's a great question. For me, I've never been one to like succumb to peer pressure. So it's always been about like pleasing the teacher, pleasing the parent, my boss, like I never partied in high school. Like my mom would force me to go like to a party. Like I wanted to stay home, and turn in that best book report or whatever we were doing. But the key thing for me on this journey to actually, I think, really break a big family expectation and say, I'm going to create a business that I love. I'm going to build a community that I want to work with. I'm going to create a platform for leaders and not do it within the confines of a 9-to-5 in corporate and like the looks that I got and the fear and the like, you will be poor and who will believe in you, all of this stuff. The way that I was able to overcome that is, one, to tap into networks of people who were doing what I wanted to do, who had who had also been through the fear and the rejection, and just realizing this was not the like go it entirely alone moment. So being in a lot of networks with other women and entrepreneurs and leaders, and once you put out that vision to the world of here's what I want to create, suddenly, Big Brother's watching. That's all you see on Instagram. That's all you're seeing in the world. And I have a whole social media rant. But the plus side is suddenly like, because what you want to see changes, you start to see it. So that was number one. Number two was doing a lot of the deep inner work. Everyone I think that's come on and shared at this summit, almost every single person has gone through some personal journey. And so while there was all this corporate success, behind the scenes was going on retreats, was working in therapy, was building up my self-trust and confidence, and starting to reclaim a lot of the personal belief that, quite frankly, I lost throughout my 20s. And I put a lot of my decisions, in the hands of the company and outside world. So that was a whole process. And so seeking really good support for that inner work. And then finally, what I think is so cool about working with leaders and building a business is like, it is so much strategy, but on the flip side, there is so much faith and so much vision and so much room to be surprised. So this has been the theme of this year, as like a willingness and an openness to be surprised. Like I set the vision, for example, for the first book, and I was completely surprised with the caliber of leaders, the depth of their stories, so it's like putting enough strategy and structure and then saying, you know what, there's probably a bigger plan that I'm not even privy to yet. So let me see what happens with that. I've kind of been a moment where I haven't been like pleasantly and just like completely surprised that that faith has been rewarded in many respects.
Oh man, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's so important for us as leaders to leave that space for that surprise. Because even if we have a little bit of that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to create, this is what I'm doing, most likely we haven't received the entire and complete bigger picture. And usually the bigger steps comes in as we take each step. So like leaving that space for surprise me, universe, like it's exciting for me. Yeah.
It's so different than, how I operated in corporate, where I was like, okay, this is what the 9-month sales cycle is going to look like. And we're going to put this RFP together, and then we're going to have this meeting, and then we're going to bring these people, and it was just like so constrained. Like there was no room for people to breathe, let alone to surprise you. And like ask the question of like, oh, how could this get even better? And it's a question I heard on a podcast recently, and I'm like, you know what? That is one that I'm just going to have everywhere. Of like, even when things are going great or not so great, it's like, how can this get better? It just orients your mind to like all possibility instead of like, what is the problem here that I have to solve? Which just, I don't know, a lot less exciting.
Yes. So now I'm curious. So what are the types of people that are drawn to you and your work?
Ooh. Yeah, you never know when you start off. And so here's what I've learned is that the people that are most drawn to me are very influential in the work that they do. They are corporate leaders. They are entrepreneurs who own often not online businesses, like business, physical businesses, real worlds that haven't been exposed to a lot of sort of the things that I've seen and learned from being in the online space and tech space. So there's definitely like they're leaders, they have large teams, they're high achievers, they're always looking for new opportunities and experiences. Like they value experiences, and they also value friendship. And I have to say that has also been the, I mean, it's somewhat by design, but it's really amazing to see the friendships being formed, for example, in the book leading through the pandemic. And for those that are attracted to me, it's like they're so far ahead of their peer set in many ways that they do feel lonely. They do feel like, all right, I'm just gonna like go on my own and like achieve things. And so when they realize that they can do things together and it can be even more fun, and there are people like them, they've just been running their own races too. I love that I get to bring these people together because they learn from each other. They learn from me. I learn from them. We expand. And it's like, whew, now what this group can achieve is even greater.
Yes.
They're high achievers who like to learn and then also have a little bit sense of, they kind of know there's something even bigger in their lives right now, and they don't know how to articulate it just yet, but they have that little intuitive hit, that little sense of like, okay, this has been going well, but I might be ready for the next chapter to unfold in my life. So I love working with people who have that little like, there's something, I don't know what it is, but like, let's explore it.
Yes. I love that you mentioned the connection between claiming that leadership role and feeling lonely. I remember my teacher in the ministry school telling me that I am a leader and that this path is very lonely, that most likely I'll have to do a lot by myself. And it was one of the things I was like, what's the fun in that? I don't want that. At the beginning, of course, it feels good because you're working on yourself. You know, the beginning is all about just who am I? Why did I choose this purpose? Like, it's you. But then once your purpose starts to go outward, you're like, who else is doing this? You know, who can I do this with? And so, yeah, if you can speak more on that, like the connection between leadership and feeling like you have to, like a leader means that you have to do this alone. Like, how do you break that? Let's break through.
You know, as you were sharing the moment from nursery school, it made me want to do a poll of the leaders, for example, that are in the book leading through the pandemic and see how many were like the group project leader in middle school, because I'm sure almost all of them were. But, you know, I think what I would say to answer your question is twofold. One, there is a tendency when you've grown up as a leader, you know, people have always looked to you to see what you're doing, to be inspired by you, to have you be the responsible one. There is a natural tendency for a leader to lose him or herself. And say, okay, my role as a leader is to put everyone's needs first. And I believe that we first need to lead ourselves. And the real challenge for a lot of the clients I work with is like allowing themselves and giving themselves permission to fully express and to find their voice and recognize that their leadership talents may need to be oriented towards something that's even more expansive and aligned to who they are. So that's number one, this like putting others first without recognizing like, wait, am I okay? Am I still growing? How can I lead myself? And then the second thing is, I just feel like there's kind of a miss out there in the marketplace right now where there's a lot of like professional networking groups, or there's just, you know, spiritual groups.
Yeah.
And I really see the opportunity is to bring something that those who are from professional but want to benefit too from like the intuitive side of the world, creating that space in order to feel like, okay, I'm growing, I'm connecting, and I'm learning to become the leader I'm meant to be, but with like-minded people who recognize that it's not just, you know, following 8 leadership principles. It's not just reading these 8 books. It's not just like expanding your team year over year. Like, it's so much more about who you are, the energy you hold, how you show up, the thoughts that I mean, all of that. So my mission is to create more spaces like that are not your typical like networking. I call it like, it's not your mom's professional networking group, and it's not your aunt's, you know, just spiritual group where you're like, that felt good, but like, what do I do with it? So I feel like I'm someone who can bridge the gap because I've valued both worlds so much. And they've been essential to who I'm becoming, I should say.
Yes. Oh, it's so important. So important. Because I'm thinking about at the beginning being part of the spiritual group, and I'm like, who knows about business? I this like I need someone to guide me through business. And then I would find, just the business group. I'm like, but nobody gets the spiritual stuff. You can't help me if you don't know even what I am about or why I do what I do. And so like lately again, setting the intention and then pulling in the right people and seeing the people who have merged those two. Oh, mind blowing. So what
Yeah.
you are sharing, like, oh man, so neat. Like I have chills always. So needed. Yes. So what is next from here, Kayleigh?
Whew. Um, so, as I shared, it's like I'll share what's next, but also know like it's the possibility for so much more. But the two main things that I'm really focused on right now is our next book. So, Leading Through the Pandemic is coming out January 15th. I'm now taking applications for the next book, which maybe we should drum roll because I haven't announced this anywhere. So this truly is new information. So like little office Michael Scott drum roll, like
Yes.
and the next book is called Significant Women. Leaders Reveal What Matters Most. And I'm so excited for this book. It will feature female corporate leaders and entrepreneurs. And in this book, the leaders are going to share their stories of personal significance. So I love the title because it's Significant Women, women who have an impact, sharing what they've come to learn means most to them and how they pursue it. So this book is going to be so phenomenal. And if you'd like to apply to contribute, I'll include the link, of course, after our interview.
Yes.
And then, that one's the book writing process is fun. And just for an example, this week in our current book, Leading Through the Pandemic, everyone shared their walk up theme music, like their pump up song. And just for a little fun, I created a playlist with all of our pump up songs.
Yes.
Leading Through the Pandemic walk up song pump up playlist. So we get to have a lot of fun as we're also working on really serious topics and bearing our souls in the book. So that's coming up next. I'm taking applications through mid-December. And then, I've felt really called. The next phase of the work that I'm doing includes working more deeply with significant women. And so I'm also launching a Significant Women Leadership Mastermind. Wow. And this is just going to be an incredible opportunity. And I think of it as an experience into what we were saying of bridging the gap between professional networking or just these skills that I want to learn. And there's a lot of personal growth that I feel that I desire in order to become the leader I'm meant to be. And so in this leadership mastermind, which will take place the first half of 2021, also taking applications right now. This is for those women who have I know I have a bigger vision. How do I pursue it? How do I connect with people who are also on their paths? And how do I have maybe a little fun along the way as I'm being a leader and serving everyone else? Like, this is my opportunity to serve women. Like, I feel extraordinarily grateful for the mentors that I've worked with this year. And it's like, this is my way to pay it forward and to connect the next group of significant women in the world who are going to impress us, lead us, show us the way. So also taking applications for that. And I'm pretty excited for that one because we'll include an actual, I'm feeling confident about this, in-person retreat, second half of 2021. So while this will be virtual, we'll definitely have an opportunity to get together in a beautiful spot in 2021. So that's just the few things that are cooking over here at Soul Excellence. And
incredible. You are on fire, goddess. You are on fire. Oh my goodness. So how it for the people who are drawn to you and want to work with you and saying, oh my gosh, yes, sign me up. How do they find you?
Yeah, so definitely post in the comments if you're interested in applying to either the mastermind or book. I'll make sure you use Awakening as your referral for either of those opportunities. But otherwise, you can just go to KayleighO'Keefe.com. I have a lot of information on the website there. You can also find my podcast, which I call a mixture of Joe Rogan meets Ben Shapiro meets Kathy Heller. So if those names mean anything to you, then I think you'll have a little bit better sense of like what the podcast is about. Interviews, incisive commentary, and then like spiritual approach to entrepreneurship. I think it's a good way to express who I am and what I'm doing right now.
Yes, I love it. Oh, Goddess, thank you. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your work. Thank you for shining your light and showing us the way, showing us the path of merging those two important aspects of what makes us leaders and be able to have a bigger impact with our messaging, with our work. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And yeah.
Thank you, Abigail. And yes, thank you everyone for just tuning in all week. It's been really nice to share my story today. So thank you for hosting, Abigail.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone. From our hearts to yours. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.